Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to get into another video by Weapon Detective. This is over the FH77 155 millimeter Howitzer. It's a towed piece from the Swedish military. It was, I think, recommended on Discord. It was recommended somewhere. I'm 99% sure Scruffy was the one who put this out on Discord. So we're going to go ahead and jump into it. I have made a handful of videos over the last couple of days, not as many as I wanted to. I had a sister who had a baby over the weekend, but I got a handful of videos done. So over the next couple of days, there's probably going to be more than one video a day put out, and it's just me kind of putting out the stuff that I have that's already recorded. I'm just sort of sitting on it right now. So be on the lookout for that sort of stuff, but let's jump into it. The FH77.
The FH77 is one of the best examples of the new generation Western 155mm towed artillery systems, which was studied between the mid-1960s and introduced in the 1970s. Although many remember it with the infamous Bofors scandal in India, this howitzer is also the hero of the Kargil War. Today, we're investigating the FH77, the fastest 155mm gunslinger.
Okay, wait, what happened with it in India?
The FH77 takes its name from the Swedish word Haubits, which means field howitzer, and the year that Sweden ordered it. It was the product of one of the new generation towed artillery development programs initiated in many Western countries between the mid-1960s and early 1970s. Two main factors paved the way for the development of the FH77. Sweden had acquired and produced the French Obusier.
Yeah, that looks pretty awesome. And whenever I'm watching him spin around like that, I'm thinking of the old Bofors AA guns where they've got the thing up there and they're having to turn it and turn it and turn it and turn it to get it to spin one way or the other, or to get the muzzle to go up or down. And he's just flying around in a circle like it's a car in that thing.
The 155mm Model 50 under license in the early 1950s. But after a while, the carriage of this howitzer, whose Swedish designation was 15.5 cm Haubits F, began to experience cracks in the harsh conditions of Scandinavia. So, the Swedish army needed a new 155mm towed howitzer. In the same period, the Warsaw Pact armies had an overwhelming numerical superiority in the field of towed artillery. As if this wasn't enough, no Western artillery system could reach the range of the 130mm M46 field gun except the 175mm M107 SPG. Alongside the M46, the BM-21 Grad multiple launch rocket system, the Warsaw Pact armies had the advantage on the counter-battery missions. So, many Western countries, including Sweden, began to work on an advanced new generation 155mm towed artillery. The new howitzers would have longer caliber barrels and be able to use new advanced artillery shells and propelling charges to increase the range. They would have an auxiliary power unit, or shortly APU. This device would increase survivability against counter-battery fire by giving them limited mobility and reducing the setup and redeployment times. The APU would also help increase the rate of fire, so a smaller number of howitzers could fire more rounds in a shorter time.
One of the things that I'm really curious about is we still have a lot of weapons, and I say we as in the West, or even, the world in a broader scope. We have a lot of weapons that are left over from the Cold War era, and I feel like there's probably a lot of reasons for that, but a big one being everybody is putting a lot of money into military R&D and into their military as a whole, even, for everything across the board, because of the sort of geopolitical situation of the time. A lot of countries sort of stopped doing that. I mean, not completely stopped, but pulled way, way, way back on it. Early 90s, mid 90s, around there. And what I'm curious of is if this ramps back up, not because obviously the military spending is going to ramp back up. It already has started to ramp back up. But I'm sort of keeping my eye out and specifically for the research and development stuff. I a lot of the cooler, like quote unquote, new era weapons came out specifically because of the Cold War. And I'm sort of watching and wondering if the next new generation of stuff is going to come out now that everybody is kind of funneling money back into their military again.
You may ask why many Western countries did not think to replace their towed artillery with self-propelled ones. All military planners thought that the conventional battles of a possible Third World War would be similar to the previous ones. In the long run, numerical superiority would prevail over quality. So, Western armies needed towed artillery, which was less complex and expensive than the self-propelled ones. For example, Sweden had already tested the M109 for its 15.5 cm Haubits F replacement program. The acquisition expenses of this self-propelled howitzer were low, but its life cycle costs were too high compared to the towed one.
Yeah, and that's sort of for everything, right? Everybody is sort of looking at the war games of how the next potential war is going to break out, and specifically with regards to sort of the eastern part of Europe and Russia. And almost everything is going off of what the ideas are about how that will happen, sort of what they're expecting in regards to a breakout of war in that area on that front. And so all of the spending, all of the ideas, all of the everything are sort of funneled into this one viewpoint, this one thought process of how this would how this would play out. And it's not like they have to look that far back. Like he just mentioned, World War II just happened, and they just saw the Soviet Union fight this massive war against Germany. And so it's easy to kind of look at that. What did they do well? What did they not do well? What are what are they good at? What do they like to do? How do they like to maneuver? What do they like to use? And obviously, when you're talking about the Soviet Union, the big thing that they lean on, and even before they were the Soviet Union, when they were the Russian Empire, they lean on manpower. That's sort of their thing. And so the thought process here is, quantity over quality. Not that the quality is going to suck, but just that you want the numbers.
Sweden studied the requirements and features of the new towed artillery system between 1965 and 1968. The Swedish Defense Procurement Agency, Försvarets Materielverk, awarded AB Bofors a development contract in the late 1960s. The company completed the first prototype of the FH77 in 1973 and began serial production in 1978. The Swedish Army took the Howitzer into service in the same year. The standard crew of the FH77 is 10 to 14 person. But 4 people can take the gun into the firing position, set up, feed, and fire. The initial variant of the Howitzer, the FH77-A, had the Volvo B20 engine mounted on the forward part of the carriage.
That reminded me of, I don't know why, but seeing like the trees and stuff on it reminded me of what was it? The Soviet tank in World War II that they would put a bucket on the end of it. I can't think of it, but if you haven't heard that story, look it up. It's sort of hilarious. They tried to camouflage it, quote unquote, camouflage it as a different piece of equipment by putting a bucket on the end of it, and I think it was supposed to imitate a muzzle brake, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
The B version has the Mercedes-Benz OM 616918 diesel engine. Thanks to the APU, the Howitzer can travel at a speed of 7 km per hour in the self-propelled mode. The gun layer, who also acts as a driver, is positioned on the left side of the carriage and uses levers to steer the FH77. The large main wheels are used for both driving and steering. The hydraulically operated support wheels on trails assist in lumbering and unlimbering the howitzer. The standard towing vehicle of the FH77 is the Saab Scania SBED111S 6x6 truck, whose Swedish Army designation was TGB-40. It had a high-up-made crane for ammunition handling. The truck can tow the howitzer at a maximum road speed of 70 km per hour. When traveling
Was that crane on the truck? Was it a part of the truck?
on rough terrain, the APU and main wheels of the FH77-A can be employed, which provides 8x8 drive capability. But due to limitations of the APU, the truck and the howitzer can go only at a speed of 8 km per hour in this configuration. Entering the firing position and setting up is performed with power provided via the APU. The gun layer hydraulically elevates and traverses the barrel. Although the barrel has limited traverse angles, the entire howitzer body can easily be turned toward the target thanks to the APU. The loading table is on the right, on which the 155mm projectiles are placed via an ammunition crane. The ammunition handler screws the fuses into the 155mm projectile and places the cartridge case onto the loading table. Cartridge cases used in the FH77A variant have been replaced with the back charges in the B version. The crane handler lifts 3 projectiles at a time onto the loading table. Thanks to this feature, the FH77A could fire 3 rounds in 6 to 8 seconds, which makes it the fastest 155mm towed howitzer. On the other hand, the rate of fire of the FH77B in burst mode is 3 rounds per 12 seconds. The loader, who sits on the right, feeds the projectile from the loading table and operates the rammer. The semi-automatic breech mechanism of the FH77A had a vertical sliding breech block opened downwards. The B
That was perfect. It landed. Did you see it? The shell on that landed.
version has a breech screw mechanism. Although the standard sight of the FH77 is the BAAB RIA electronic sight, the howitzer can be used with different ones. It also has a telescope sight which can magnify the target's view 4 times. The BAAB NK24 night sight fitted in front of the ordinary telescopic sight allows direct fire capability under night conditions. The howitzer is equipped with an electromechanical firing device. The FH77 also has hand pumps, one for laying and ramming and one for the caster wheels. They can be used to obtain the pressure required in the hydraulic systems in case of an APU failure. Also, thanks to these hand pumps, the howitzer can be operated quietly, which offers a highly effective solution to hiding the firing position. The FH77A had a 155mm 38 caliber barrel. The export variant of the howitzer, the FH77B, is fitted with a 39 caliber one, which can fire NATO standard ammunition. Later, Sweden also updated its FH77As to B standards. These
Yeah, I was just about to ask that if they have, if they made the move over at some point.
howitzers had some other modifications to be operated at lower temperatures. The FH77B has better general handling and cross-country mobility. Besides, it is fitted with a breech screw mechanism and a new hydraulic loading system. Initially, the B version had a parallel pepper pot muzzle brake similar to the A variant. However, following trials, the late production models of the FH77B were fitted with a new and more efficient double baffle ones. The early production howitzers have also been refitted with this muzzle brake later. Thanks to these changes, the maximum range of the FH77 has increased from 22,000 to 30,000 meters. It can also fire bonus, the artillery cluster munition designed for indirect fire top attack rolls against armored vehicles within a range of 35,000 meters. Currently, some Indian companies and research institutions are jointly working on 155mm shells using ramjet propulsion. So, the Indian FH77s can send a precision-guided round to over 60,000 meters range when the project is concluded.
Jeez.
In 1992, Sweden began the REMO project and mounted several FH77s onto the Volvo A30D all-terrain articulated hauliers. This project led to the
With that, the Indian project, that's almost, those days are almost here. You know, the days of having shells and having munitions that aren't dropped on a super specific spot, those days are almost behind us, which seems kind of crazy, but you know, it's very soon going to be the case that anything that is uh, any sort of shell, any sort of round that's fired downfield is going to have essentially a way, whether it's laser guided, GPS guided, it's going to hit, you know, depending on range, the exact spot that it's supposed to hit. And when you compare that to, you know, weapons platforms of the past, that is just not the case. You know, World War II, a ton of the bombing runs are centered around the fact, the knowledge that everybody has that essentially nobody's going to hit the target. So you just sort of send wave after wave after wave, and somebody will get it for these bombing runs. And now it's a totally different world.
creation of the FH77BW L52 Archer, which is a 52 caliber variant of the FH77. 12 centimeter Rurlik Kustartillery PS M80 Karin, also known as the CD80, was the coastal artillery variant of the FH77 with a 120mm 55 caliber barrel. The Karin was an acronym for the Kustartilleriets Rörliga Invasionsförsvar, meaning Coastal Artillery's Mobile Invasion Defense. In addition to the barrel, it also had a different ammunition handling system and a fully remote-controlled improved laying system. Thanks to these features, the Karin could engage moving naval targets with high precision. The Royal Swedish Coast Artillery took the delivery of the pre-production model of the Karin in 1978 for trials.
So Sweden has artillery for like coastal artillery defense that are there all the time, correct? And then this was mobile artillery that you could move around depending on where you needed it most. But that's correct, right? They have artillery that's always there. It's in place, and then the mobile artillery was on top of that. If I'm incorrect, somebody tell me.
3 years later, the revised serial production variant, which could be operated with fire control radar, was delivered. It had a rate of fire of 15 rounds per minute and a range of 30,000 meters. The Karin was also installed on the Volvo A30D all-terrain articulated haulier for trial purposes. But unlike the Archer program, this project was terminated later. We should add that the Indian Danish towed howitzer is developed based on the FH77. Sweden retired all FH77s and Karins by the new millennium. India and Nigeria still operate this howitzer. The crew of the FH77B is 6 people. In the traveling position, the howitzer is 11.6 meters long, 2.65 meters wide, and 2.82 meters high.
Okay, so 6 people is what it's supposed to have. I'm pretty sure he said earlier that it could be set up and fired with 4 people. So is that a worst case scenario? It can still, you know, it can still be used effectively with a 4-person crew, but typically it's going to have a crew of 6 people.
The firing position, its width increases to 7.18 meters. The combat weight of the FH77B is 12,000 kilograms. The 155mm 39 caliber gun has a range of 34,000 meters with a standard projectile and 30,000 meters with a high explosive extended range projectile. The rate of fire is 10 rounds per minute. The elevation of the gun is between -3 and +70 degrees. The barrel can be traversed at 30 degrees on both sides. Due to the neutrality policy of Sweden, the FH77 never saw combat in the Swedish Army service. However, the Nigerian howitzers continued to fight against the jihadist groups in the country successfully. But we should admit that the adventures of the FH77 in India have made it mediatic. India's initial order for 410 FH77Bs in the mid-1980s was the largest export success in Swedish history. Also, Delhi planned to produce another 1,000 howitzers under license. But these happy days ended with a story aired by a Swedish radio in 1987. The infamous Bofors scandal broke out, which revealed that some Indian politicians had been involved in bribery during the negotiations. Then Delhi naturally
Okay, so that makes sense. That's still 410 of them. But then it came out that Bofors basically was paying politicians under the table to get this deal done through. Is that is that essentially what it was? That's when you think about sort of the layout of today and how arms sales work. It's it's a little bit hilarious because you know that this happens all the time. All the time. But yeah, I can see why it was a big deal.
cancelled the program. Even though India had chosen the FH77 called Bofors gun in this country because of the bribery, the howitzer proved its value during the 1999 Kargil War. In the early stages of the war, the Pakistan army captured key positions on hilltops overlooking routes connecting Siachen and Kashmir Valley with the rest of the country. The Indians could not get proper air support to repel the Pakistanis. In Star Wars, when Anakin said don't underestimate my power to Obi-Wan, who was on the high ground, he was wrong. But this time, the Indians said don't underestimate the power of our Bofors guns, and they were right. During Operation Vijay, the Bofors guns of the Indian army managed to force the Pakistan army to vacate the hilltops by suppressing the enemy's artillery. Its highly accurate deep strike and direct fire capabilities had paralyzed the Pakistanis. But the battle was also highly costly. The 286th Medium Regiment of the Indian Army lost all 18 Bofors guns in 25 days.
Damn!
But the bravely fought Indians managed to take the strategic peaks like Tiger Hill and Tololan with the invaluable assistance of the FH-77. The Bofors gun was the real hero of the Kargil War. It is unfair to remember the FH-77 Bofors scandal. It is indeed a successful howitzer which bears the elegance and high quality of Swedish engineering. Still, we should admit that the FH-77 has managed to erase the black mark next to its name with its achievements in the Kargil War. It undoubtedly deserves to be mentioned as a legend. Thanks for watching our video. And please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the bell button to be notified of our new videos.
Yeah, so go support Weapon Detective. They're awesome. All of their videos have been really great. I really like watching them. So make sure you go support them, and I'll put the link to the original video down in the description box. For this one, that was the FH77 155mm towed howitzer. I did not know the quote unquote scandal, but man, it seems like they were glad they had them. You know, when push came to shove, it really helped them in a tight spot. So, but they were going to get, they had ordered 410, and then they were going to get the license to make 1,000 more of their own. So they were going to have almost 1,500 of them. That's a lot. That's a lot, you know, for the time period and for a country that's getting smacked around by Pakistan a little bit. Okay, so that was a good video. Like I said, I'll have a handful of other ones out over the next few days. They may be kind of random all over the place, but it's because I've got them all in the books and I'm trying to get them out. So be on the lookout for those. As always, like, comment, subscribe. Help me keep building the channel over here, and I will see you all next time.